From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Wednesday, March 19th, and here are today's headlines. Vermont lawmakers are considering legislation that would backfill federal cuts to a popular nutrition program. Vermont found out last week that the Trump administration is cutting $1.7 million from a USDA program that was supposed to help schools and food shelves purchase produce from local farmers. Shaftesbury Representative David Durfee, the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, says the announcement caught policymakers by surprise.
Up until last week, or up until earlier this calendar year, there wasn't any question about whether that funding would be coming in, and then suddenly it was canceled.
The House Agriculture Committee has approved legislation that would use $2 million in state funding to keep the program in place. House budget writers are still considering the funding request. Some immigration attorneys are cautioning clients who have a green card or other non-citizen legal status about air travel. This after a New Hampshire resident was detained at Logan Airport earlier this month. GBH reported that German-born Fabian Schmidt was detained earlier this month coming back from Luxembourg, despite having a green card. Customs and Border Protection has not said why he's being held. Relatives say Schmidt was violently interrogated and is being held at a detention center in Rhode Island. With cases like these, New Hampshire-based lawyer Enrique Mesa says all green card holders should think carefully about the risks of traveling right now.
They could travel, but I cannot guarantee that they're going to be able to come back to the United States.
If traveling, Mesa recommends taking all documents relevant to that person's legal status. CBP could not be immediately reached for comment. Vermont's largest substance use disorder treatment provider is aiming to shut down its women's facility in Vergennes by the end of the month. Valley Vista's newly admitted patients are instead, as of yesterday, going to their Bradford location. That's according to VT Digger, which says state officials are concerned about the company's financial sustainability. The consolidation is expected to cut about 20 jobs and save Valley Vista $60,000 a month or more. Women and men will now be treated in separate wings of the Bradford facility, which will offer about 90 beds. Next time your tires get stuck in the mud, don't just blame it on your unpaved road. Vermont State geologist Ben DeYoung says Vermont's geology greatly contributes to the muddiness of mud season in our region. Yesterday on Vermont Edition, DeYoung explained that Vermont's bedrock is predominantly made of silt and clay, the same ingredients as mud.
It originated in a shallow sea that existed to our east hundreds of millions of years ago. And those silts and clays were turned into rock and then shoved up as our green mountains. It's safe to say that if Vermont was built on all sandstone and we had abundant, well-drained sand and gravel, we might see very different road conditions each March.
Once the snow melts, DeYoung says he and his team go on high alert for landslides that could affect local infrastructure, housing, or businesses. Coming up, the Democratic Party is licking its wounds following Donald Trump's second successful bid for the presidency. The party is also stifled by Republican majorities in the House and Senate, but may have hope in attempts to counterpunch, led by Vermont's independent Senator Bernie Sanders. Sanders has taken to the road trying to rally political and public opposition to what he calls Trump's unconstitutional agenda, and he spoke with Vermont Public's senior political reporter Bob Kinzel about the effort. We'll hear their conversation after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VITA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VITA can help make it happen.
In the weeks since President Trump returned to the White House, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has quickly become one of the most public critics of the new administration. And the 83-year-old Democratic Socialist has taken that message on the road, holding rallies in purple states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. Vermont Public's senior political correspondent Bob Kinzel spoke with Sanders this week about this campaign, known as the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, and what Sanders hopes to accomplish. Their conversation began with a question about Sanders' recent vote against a government funding bill.
Bernie, last week, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer supported the House Republican budget plan, saying it was the lesser of two evils. He argued that a government shutdown would give President Trump and his advisor, Elon Musk, even more authority to slash federal programs. Now, you strongly disagreed with his position, and you voted for a government shutdown. What about his concerns? Was he wrong?
Bob, I didn't vote. I didn't vote for a government shutdown. What I voted for and wanted was the Republicans to come to the table. This is the very first time that anybody can remember where you had one party, in this case, a handful of right-wing Republican extremists in the House writing the entire bill. Always, because they need 60 votes in the Senate, it is a bipartisan effort. What I wanted was the Republicans to sit down and negotiate rather than just shove a unilateral and terrible bill down our throats. This was a very bad piece of legislation. What it did is move us continuously along the line of authoritarianism in giving Trump and Musk a blank check to do what they want with federal funds, rather than has been the case in the past where Congress has input and say, all right, this is where money in education is going. This is where money in veterans programs are going. This is what we do with Social Security. This one was more or less a blank check. Hey, Trump, you do what you want with it. Very bad idea, unprecedented, and part of that movement toward authoritarianism, which we must fight.
Bernie, I had one other question about Senator Schumer. Do you think he should step down as minority leader?
It's more than Schumer. If you're looking at just Schumer, the question is, okay, who replaces him in the Senate? What is the agenda? And more importantly, do we need fundamental reform of the Democratic Party? Do we need, instead of right now, in my view, what the Democratic Party is essentially a party funded by very wealthy people, a party run by consultants, often people very much out of touch with the working class of this country. So what I am trying to do, along with some others, including Alexandria, is to force open the Democratic Party to bring in working class people, bring in young people, bring in people of color. So what I think we need is a political revolution. You open the doors and you demand that Congress starts taking on the oligarchy and the special interests and fights for the needs of working class people. Look, we have more wealth and income inequality today than we've ever had in America. Do you hear anybody talking about that? So you got a corrupt campaign finance system hitting both political parties, and anybody who's serious about the situation in America has got to recognize that and address it.
Bernie, a number of federal judges have blocked actions taken by the Trump administration. More lawsuits are in the pipeline. It's likely that most of these cases will be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. Do you have confidence that the court will find that the administration has acted illegally in many of these situations?
Well, the administration has acted illegally, and many of the lower courts have found that, and I appreciate that. I have no idea what the Supreme Court will do. It is a conservative court, many Trump appointees on it. But I'll tell you what does concern me, and I hope that it concerns every Vermonter and every American. And that is, when I talk about moving toward authoritarianism, it's not just that Trump is trying to usurp the powers of Congress, which was what he has been doing for the last month, both in cutting funding that Congress had appropriated and in this particular piece of legislation that we discussed. It's his attacks on media. The other day, I think he was saying that CNN and MSNBC are, quote unquote, illegal, should be investigated. And they're going to go after, by the way, NPR, PBS, because these outlets are sometimes critical of the president. So can you imagine? And he has sued the Des Moines Register for a poll that he didn't like. He has sued ABC, he's suing Meta. So you have a president who thinks that the function of the media is simply to glorify him, not to tell the American people what they think is really going on. And then in terms of the courts, you asked me about the Supreme Court. Musk is talking about, and I think Trump now as well, if there's a judge who rules against me, we have to impeach that judge, because the only judges we like are people who think that the executive branch has unlimited power. Add all that stuff up, the attacks against the courts, the attacks against Congress, the attacks against the media. That is, Bob, what authoritarian is. And I don't care whether you're a conservative Republican or a progressive. The founding fathers, I have to say, the more I look back on it, these guys were pretty smart in the 1790s or whatever, when they understood that we had to have a separation of powers. Give the executive power, give Congress power, give the judiciary power. Let them check each other. And what Trump is trying to do in a very forceful way is undo what our Constitution ordained. And that is a very dangerous situation.
Finally, Bernie, as you look at some of the huge challenges facing the country, many of which you've talked about today, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of democracy?
Well, Bob, when I go out and I talk to people, and I think in the rallies that Alexandria and I will be holding in a few days, I think you're going to see tens of thousands of people coming out. And I look out in the faces and I see, blacks and whites and Latinos and young people and old people and gay people and straight people who really understand that we can move this country in a very different direction. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world. You should not have massive poverty among the elderly and the children. You should not have 800,000 people who are homeless. We should not have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. People understand that we have the potential to create a very different country where all of our people have a decent standard of living, that healthcare is a human right, that we address the planetary crisis of climate change, etc. So in that sense, I am optimistic. Can we galvanize people fast enough to get involved in the political process, to take on the Democratic Party, to take on the Republican Party? That remains to be seen, but that is what I'm trying to do.
That was Senator Bernie Sanders speaking with Vermont Public's Bob Kinzel. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Peter Hirschfeld, the New England News Collaborative, Kevin Trevelyan, and Michaela Lafrac. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. Talk to you tomorrow.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.